Hello, good morning, and many thanks indeed for joining us. I trust you slept easy, woken up well as always, and you're ready to face this good day. Right, I'm really stoked about today because we shall be discussing the Kenya that we want. And we know that dozens of activists gathered in Nairobi on Thursday, and they said the clamor for constitutional changes by the ruling class could be detrimental if Kenyans allow leaders' interest to prevail. While launching a campaign dubbed Kenya Twitter Kayo, which is Kenya we want in English, the activist called upon Kenyans to rise and fight against impunity as well as claim political and economic freedom. They'll be joined, or I'll be joined with them or by them much later in the course of the program. This will be George Kigoro, who is Executive Director of Kenya Human Rights Commission. Also be joined by John Gidongo, who is the CEO of Inuka Trust. We'll be joined by also Mary Mukindia. She's an executive coach, and also she is a leadership coach as well. And we'll be joined also much later by Sam Hochi, who is the Executive Director of International Commission of Jurists. So you can chime in, head over to our Twitter handle, which is AM Live NTV. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook. So make sure, as always, you give us a thumbs up there. And 20686 is our SMS portal. Which is the ideal Kenyan that you always think about, that you always aspire to have in this country? Are we any way or in any way farther from that particular ideal picture that is in your head? Let us know what you think about the ideal Kenya, and we shall be discussing this much later with the course, or with the panelists who will be here much later. Right, my gears are still, turning, and yes, I'm still waking up, still booting in the morning as well. But there's a lot that we'll also be looking at in our news bulletin today as well. But before we head there, let's see what is also on the front pages of the dailies. And this is what is on the front cover of the Daily Nation this morning that you're waking up to. Olympic legend keep in trouble. This is what it says. And we'll give you also the gritty details of this. Fresh investigations likely to shake up athletics fraternity, it says. And it says, how Rio de Janeiro 2016 Olympic Games probe committee discovered that the sports ministry had signed a ticketing deal with the local travel agency to provide air tickets at a much higher price than the national carrier, Kenya Airways, had quoted, while the National Olympics Committee of Kenya had negotiated for a 175,000 shillings bill per economy class ticket to Rio. The travel company had increased the rate to 445,381,000. Business class rates were quoted at 800,000, but the agency charged 2,028,385,000 per ticket. That is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Also, just to prime you as well, when we were talking about athletics this morning, that Kenya's Kalalei has gotten 4-year doping ban, and we'll be giving you details of this as well much later. That is the marathoner runner Samuel Kalalei, who won the Athens Marathon last November, has been banned for 4 years after testing positive for blood booster EPO, according to Athletics Integrity Unit. We'll give you all the gritty details as well, but also this is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Car or the crash driver had decried bad brakes. This is the ongoing story on what really happened with, or that particular tragic accident that happened at Fort Tenan. Family says Mr. Lucas Asangasa, who succumbed to injuries yesterday, was uneasy. Half a century at helm. This is the story of this particular driver. Experience born in today's Vihiga County in 1946. Asanga's family says he had about 50 years of experience driving on Kenyan roads. Also fatigued, only authority will know through investigations, even though he has been accused by his surviving passengers of arrogance and careless driving. He and his conductor did not survive the crash. 58 number of people who have so far died as a result of the Wednesday accident in Kericho. The number kept rising That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Just also to read what it says here, the sub-headlines: athletics legend and former CS Hassan Wario among 7 high-ranking officials to be investigated afresh of the Rio Olympics scandal, which yielded one of the most scandalous outings in Kenya's history. And this story continues at the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Standard. And this is what you're waking up to today. Secrets of top witness in Joey and Maribe probe. Kassaine was released from police custody yesterday. Now, he is a state witness. He told police Joey went to his house to ask for paraffin. He also said suspect told him to go and get gun from his house. He is key to DPP's case. You have his story continuing on page 4 of the Standard today. Also, Kassaine's relevance in murder probe. 1. He owns the gun that Joey used to try to kill himself. 2. He claims Joey spoke to him on night of murder. 3. Alleged Joey asked him for paraffin to burn something. Together with Maribe, took Joey to three hospitals, that is 4. And 5. Alleged he is privy to why lovers quarreled. And 6. He is couple's neighbor and Joey's friend. That is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. Also, Kenya Benga maestro given hero send-off. This was the farewell on the music scene. He was known for his melodious voice and agile dance moves. Yesterday, hundreds turned up for his burial in Murang'a County. Those who paid him glowing tribute included President Uhuru Kenyatta, his deputy William Ruto, and opposition leader Raila Odinga. You can follow this story on page 8 of the Standard this morning. Let's see what we have on the Star. Musalia blocks Raila move to shuffle MPs, it says. This is your splash today. Lawful? A probing question there. Political parties tribunal holds removal of MPs from committees pending hearing. NC protest that the MPs were not given a hearing or reason before being moved. And you have the story on page 6 of the Star this morning. Uhuru Raila say their unity path will not be easy. President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga yesterday warned Kenyans that the handshake journey will be rough and bumpy, but worthwhile. They said although their unity was going to face tough challenges, it was in the best interest of the country. This story also continues on page 6 where it's tucked away. Also, we have the corridors of justice. Maraga moves land disputes out of court. The judiciary has launched an out-of-court mediation process to reduce the backlog of cases. Court-annexed mediation will be carried out under the supervision of the court with a mediator appointed by the judiciary. And we have this story continuing on page 24 of the Star this morning. Also, DPP orders IG to investigate those behind Killer Bass. That is the Kericho horror. You have that story on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. Also, maize mill. Millers oppose state move to fix and control unga prices is another story on page 10 of the Star. Kidero rubbishes EACC claim he is worth 9 billion shillings. That is another story on page 2 of the Star. Also, you can see a related picture here. They all came to celebrate the legendary Kamaru. That is a story that continues on page 6, but this is a standalone picture there. President Uhuru Kenyatta here can be seen with Deputy William Ruto and Captain Kungu at the funeral of Joseph Kamaru in Murang'a yesterday. Let's move on and we see what we have on the front page of the People Daily. Family of 4 perishes on way to bury dad. Fate, destiny, providence. What do you believe in? For Fred Atonga, it's all got to do with God's plan, miracles, and a bit of luck. He survived, but his nephew Nicholas Velasco and wife, 2 children, didn't. And this story continues on page 4 of the People Daily. And on top here, we can see the faces. They say these state officers must take responsibility for road carnage. You have the commentary on page 6 of the People Daily. That is James Macharia, Cabinet Secretary Transport, also Dr. Fred Matiang'i, Cabinet Secretary Interior, Joseph Boynet, Inspector General of Police, and Francis Major, Director General NTSA. That is all tucked away, or you can read the commentary on page 6, as I've mentioned, of this People Daily this morning. Also, heated water row bubbles up at heroic send-off for Kamaro is another story, and you can see them, also the pallbearers carrying the coffin that the late Kamaru is actually laid in. That was yesterday's send-off. You can follow this story on page 2 of the People Daily. Also, girl to MPs, save us from sex pest. To mark the day of girl child, students gets rare chance to address Parliament, makes passionate plea for action on perverts. That is another story that you want to follow there on page 13 of the People Daily this morning. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo. And this is what is your splash today. Raila apokewa kishujaa kati. Kiongozi wa ODM akaribishwa kwa mbwembwe Murang'a, ishara ya mazingira mapya ya kisiasa Mlima Kenya. You can follow this story on page 2 of the Taifa Leo this morning. And you can see also a picture here. Jamaa ya familia katika kijiji cha Mulwanda, kaunti ya Kakamega, wakiomboleza watu 5 wa familia moja waliokufa kwenye mkasa wa basi Kericho walipokuwa wakienda kwa mazishi. You can follow this story on page 2 of the Taifa Leo. Business Daily is holding this splash for you. 3 billion shillings, it says, cooking gas for the poor hit by fraud. Is a story on the front page of the Business Daily. New report shows suppliers delivered thousands of faulty cylinders that pose the risk of fire eruptions. This story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily today, and we have the picture there of Mary Jane Mwangi, the National Oil Corporation of Kenya Chief Executive, and it says fraudulent contractors supplied 67,241 faulty gas cylinders, scuttling a government plan to provide poor homes with cheaper cooking fuel. A report on the multi-billion shillings project has revealed more than a third of the liquefied petroleum gas cylinders supplied to the National Oil Corporation of Kenya were substandard, including having faulty valves that pose a danger of the fire or of fire eruptions. You have this story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. We continue. There's a side by story here. Nyong'o's nephew to get share of inheritance. Kisumu Governor Anyang' Nyong'o and his sister Rispa Nyagoi will have to include all children belonging to their 2 sisters as beneficiaries of the late father's multi-million shilling property the High Court has ordered. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily. Kamaru farewell also is on the front page of the Business Daily, and we can see there President Uhuru Kenyatta hugging Selina, the sister of Joseph Kamaru, during the funeral service of the veteran musician at Mudhidhi Secondary School in Murang'a yesterday. The popular musician, who died at 79 on October the 3rd, was buried in Lahari village in Kigumo constituency. Also, maize farmers lost 3 billion shillings to fall armyworm, it says. And you can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, Ken poaching set to end in new zoning rules. Farmers and millers have agreed on key clauses in the proposed sugar regulations, putting an industry on the path to end perennial Ken poaching wars. That story continues on page 6 of the Business Daily. 8.5% rate at which banks were borrowing from each other at the beginning of August. That is the figure there. You can follow that also inside the Business Daily. And on corporate news, investment firm FEP sinks deeper into the red. Audit firm PKF Kenya has raised queries on the financial health of Fountain Enterprises Program Holdings after its fiscal results for 2017 indicated that its liabilities exceeded its assets by 339 million shillings. This story also continues on page 8 of the Business Daily. And youth risk blacklisting in mobile loan craze. Many young and tech-savvy people at an increased risk of ruining their credit score or scores and reducing future access to loans by failing to falling, I should say, for easy cam digital loans. You can follow the story on page 21 of the Business Daily this morning. We cross borders now and we go to Tanzania, where we have this particular splash on the front page of the Citizen. The big question, why? That is what is on the front page of the Citizen this morning. And we can see here the time around which Mr. Deji was kidnapped. This is a kidnapping story that is on the front pages or dominating the headlines in Tanzania. Tanzanians from across different walks of life were begging for answers of the reasons and people behind the abduction of dollar billionaire Mohammed Dewji Mo, whose whereabouts remained unknown by the time of filing this particular report. Government authorities announced a manhunt was ongoing for a suspected gunman who abducted the 43-year-old businessman yesterday morning as he went to a gym for his routine exercising. And you can follow this story on page 2 of The Citizen. We are holding 12 suspects in connection with the abduction. This is what Dar es Salaam police boss is saying. Mr. Mambo Sasa. You can follow that story on page 2 of The Citizen. Also, government reassures investors amid fears of regulatory changes. Is another story on page 2 of The Citizen. And Bakhresa holds export of flour to Kenya over taxes. This story continues on page 20 of The Citizen in Tanzania. Let's see what we have also on the front page of Mwananchi still in Tanzania. Mo Dewji atikisa. That is what is on the front page of The Citizen. This is all about the kidnapping. And you can see also Makonda says ukaguzi unaendelea maeneo mbalimbali. Askari wamezagaa kila kona ya mkoa wa Dar es Salaam kuhakikisha tunapata taarifa sahihi ya kumpata ndugu yetu Mohamed Dewji, na kama kuna mikakati ya kuchafua mkoa wa Dar es Salaam tunataka kuhakikisha tuhakikishe kupitia tukio hili hakuna tena utekaji na uharibifu wa amani. And you can read the rest of the details here on the front page of the Mwananchi if you're waking up in Tanzania. And of course you can see how all this happened. We have the pictorials here for you, and you can get all the gritty details on page 2 of the Mwananchi. In Uganda, you have the Daily Monitor. Mudslides kills 25 bury 100 homes in Bududa. That is what we have as a splash as well. Mudslides kill 25 bury 100 homes in Bududa. Hell breaks loose as heavens open in Bakalasi. This story continues on page 4 and 5, and you can see the sheer devastation as well. A related picture here. Residents stare at the scene where mudslides killed dozens in Bakalasi sub-county, Bududa district, following a downpour yesterday. That story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor. Also, government fails to quiz Besigye in CAA case. The opposition politician sued Civil Aviation Authority for allegedly pulling him out of the Kenya Airways plane unlawfully and unfairly. This story continues on page 10 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Also, teachers selling fake UCE exam papers. This is what UNEB is saying. And also, Africa's youngest billionaire abducted. This is another story on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. The story of Mo on page 10. Museveni addresses London meeting on illegal wildlife trade as well. That is on the page 3 and 7 of the Daily Monitor. NRM party chairman survives lynching of the president's cash is another story. The youth in Makinde, Kampala accuse Mr. Kasimu Waswa of having received cash donation from the president. And you have the story on page 8 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. In Rwanda, we have this particular splash for you. D-Day. Leaders to elect Francophonie boss today, it says, after months on the campaign trail that took her to different countries across the world. Today is a moment of truth for Foreign Affairs Minister Louise Mushikiwabo. The minister is on the ballot for the post of Secretary General of Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, that is OIF, and the vote will be cast today at the summit for the body in Yerevan, Armenia. You can follow this story on page 4 of the New Times today. You can also see a related picture there. Kagame attends opening session of the 17th Francophonie Summit. These are the leaders, and that story, as I've mentioned, you have it on page 4. Also, government rolls out campaign to tackle teenage pregnancies is another story. On page 2, Rwandan activists to be featured on World Thrombosis Day. And that story continues on page 5 of the New Times as well. Let's see what we have in other dailies, and I want to show you also what we have on the front page of the Harvard Business Review, or we can begin with the Time magazine. Inside Disney's Magic. This is how it looks. If you've not gotten your current copy, Inside Disney's Magic, the new way to work, a life-saving vaccine, smarter pizza, and more companies inventing the future. And you can see this is Disney's CEO, Bob Iger. You can follow this particular latest edition, also the story of what artificial intelligence is doing, or Inside Disney's Magic. And you have also the 50 genius companies of 2018. Find out which are the 50 genius companies of 2018. All that inside the Time magazine, the latest edition. Also, we have The Economist for you. China's design on Europe. The rest to replace May after tsunami trade. Why USMCA? Also a probing question. Also bigging up the gig economy. But the main story is China's designs on Europe. Follow that story and you can see that quintessential, of course, picture of Mona Lisa and her holding that particular flag of China as well. Take a copy of The Economist for this. Let's see what we have also on the front page of the New York Times. And this is how it looks on the front page of the New York Times. Trump gives dictators the green light. That is by Michelle Goldberg, an opinion there. Accusations of a burial murder, of a brutal, I should say, brutal murder, not burial, a brutal murder and a cover-up. Saudi descendants killed in consulate in Istanbul, Turkish officials say. Saudi dissident killed in consulate in Istanbul. This particular diplomatic round has been ongoing about that particular journalist that disappeared. Top Turkish security officials have concluded that the Saudi dissident Jamal Khashoggi was assassinated in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on orders from the highest levels of the royal court. This is according to a senior official. The official described a quick and complex operation in which Mr. Khashoggi was killed within 2 hours of his arrival at the consulate by a team of Saudi agents who dismembered his body with a bone saw they had brought for that particular purpose. It is like pulp fiction, the official said. You can read the rest of the details here, also the front page of the New York Times. Also at 2, seeking mercy from US. Stiffer immigration rules have more children than ever in federal custody. That is what we have on the front page of the New York Times as well this morning. Let's see what we have also on the front page of other dailies as well. Try and lift up also what is on the front page of the Harvard Business Review for you. If not really grabbed the copy, this is how it looks. The business case for curiosity. It can improve your firm's adaptability and performance. Right, curiosity. If you're curious, you can also grab the latest copy of the Harvard Business Review to read all about that curiosity. Also navigating talent hotspots. This is by William Carr. Initiative Overload, Rose Hollister and Michael D. Watkins. They give you all those details as well. And Lincoln's Transformative Leadership, there by Doris Cairns Goodwin. You can follow that story on page 126 of the Harvard Business Review. Let's move on and we see what we have on the front page of the National Geographic. This is the latest edition. Protecting Earth's most threatened people. Last tribe of the Amazon. The wild ponies of Wales in Iran's nomads fading away. Falcons, ruler of the sky. That is the latest copy and that is how it looks. Let's see also what we have on the front page of the History magazine. If you are a history buff, this also will tickle your fancy. World War I, was it worth it? That is a probing question there. And you can also read about Armistice Centenary issue. This is actually the Armistice Centenary issue of the BBC History magazine. Also in the issue, Michael Wood on the Anglo-Saxons. Also we have Diarmaid MacCulloch on the Thomas Cromwell there, and Lucy Worsley on Lincoln. Andrew Roberts also on Churchill. Grab a copy of the latest edition of the History magazine as well. I want to show you finally what we do have also on the front page of Vogue magazine. If you've not captured your latest, this is how it looks. Chic is back. You can grab a copy of the Vogue Homes. That is on the front page, of course. This is on the front page of the Vogue magazine. Make sure you grab a copy as well. Lastly, let's see what are we leaving out that we haven't really captured for you. If you're interested in politics, this is the latest edition there of the Political. Trump judges put Democrats in election bind that should say senators up for re-election must choose between campaigning or fighting judicial nominees, it says. And Dems' hopes of majority rest on reeling Heitkamp, the North Dakota Democrat, is down in polls, and if she loses, it will all but eliminate the chances of a Democratic Senate. That is a story that you want to follow also on the front page of Politico. Also, McCarthy woos Trump's immigration populist, and Hoyer eyes majority leader position in 2019, all in the latest edition of the Politico as well. Let's see finally what we do have as editorial cartoons as well. But I think also we can come up locally and we see what we have on the front page of the Nairobi Business Monthly as well. This is the latest edition. Can you trust your bank? It asks. For engaging in money laundering, CBK gave the culpable institutions a mere slap on the wrist. This is what is on the front page of the Nairobi Business Monthly, the latest edition. Also, I can show you what we have on the front page of the Nairobi Loan Monthly and what it holds for you as well. Breaking new frontiers, it says. It has held 4 dockets since 2013. The only CS to do so, delivering powerful results each time. Among others, he spearheaded digital migration, enacted land laws, and dismantled exam cartels. With fire in his belly, Dr. Fred Matiang'i is chomping at the bit for the challenge in his current job at the Ministry of Interior. You can follow this story inside the Nairobi Law Monthly. And finally, we have the editorial cartoons as well for you. This is what is on inside the Daily Nation. Money on the box. This is all about Traffic Department, NTSA, and Michuki rules as well. People are going for the money, but they're not really following the rules in the box. And that is what Monene has captured for us this morning. And also we have Kiptum from the People Daily, also still on the road carnage. Who is to blame for this mess? And you can see everyone there, the people, all the faces. We have the Inspector General of Police, NTSA, Interior Ministry, all Transport Ministry as well. Of course, it's you, all of you. This is what Kiptum has drawn for us this morning. And finally, just want to show you briefly what we have also, the latest edition of the Fortune magazine, the latest edition also of the New African as well. I'll show you the hard copy. I'll walk over there as well just to give you that briefly before we show you the highlights as well. And Nigeria, a fascinating enigma. This is what is on the front page of the latest of the African, the News African. This is how it looks. And also we do have, well, I thought I had my Time magazine as well. I just will show you that, the New African. I should have shown you also, not really the Time magazine, but the Fortune magazine, but it's not with me. But let's see what is at issue this morning in our news highlights. Kenya's Kalale gets 4-year doping ban. We have the details. Congo's Ebola outbreak expected to last 3 to 4 days, or 3 to 4 months, I should say, World Health Organization has said. And 11 dies, bus and truck collide in Russia. Now, marathon runner Samuel Kalale, who won the Athens Marathon last November, has been banned for 4 years after testing positive for blood booster EPO, according to the Athletics Integrity Unit. Kalale's urine sample, which was collected after the Rotterdam Marathon in April, had returned positive for EPO. The 23-year-old was provisionally suspended by IEU, the independent agency of World Athletics ruling body IAAF, on June the 4th. The AIU said that all of Kalale's results since that event in Netherlands will now stand disqualified. Kalale had set a personal best time of 2 hours, 10 minutes and 44 seconds to finish in 7th place. Kenya's reputation as a dominant force in global middle and long distance running has been tarnished in recent years by doping cases among their elite athletes. Right. Earlier this year, the AIU handed 4-year doping bans to Kenyan long-distance runner Eliud Magut and Suleiman Kipses Simotwo. Both had tested positive for, well, that is a very difficult substance. I can't read it on there, but a metabolite of the prohibited Nadolin, a World Anti-Doping Agency report said that between 2004 and August the 1st, 2018, as many as 138 athletes from the East African, from Kenya, I should say, had tested positive for prohibited substances, 113 of them during competitions. It seems always we are waiting for the other shoe to drop as far as athletics is concerned, also the Olympics as well. Make sure you grab a copy of the Daily Nation for also the latest edition of all the recent revelations about that Rio report. Olympic legend keep in trouble. Also it says that athletics legend and former CS Hassan Wario are among 7 high-ranking officials to be investigated afresh over Rio Olympics scandal, which yielded one of the most scandalous outings in Kenya's history. This story continues at the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. We cross borders now, where Democratic Republic of Congo's Ebola outbreak is expected to last several months and could spread at any time to Uganda or Rwanda, which are well prepared but have not approved use of a vaccine, according to the World Health Organization. But the most concerning area is the city of Beni in Congo's North Kivu province, where dozens of people who... the Kenya that you love. What is the ideal Kenya scenario that you love to see every day? Well, dozens of activists gathered in Nairobi yesterday and said the clamor for constitutional changes by the ruling class could be a detrimental to the country if Kenyans allow leaders' interests to prevail. While launching a campaign dubbed Kenya Tuitakayo, that is Kenya We Want, the activists called upon Kenyans to rise and fight against impunity as well as claim political and economic freedom. And this morning we want to focus on that on the Leadership Forum. What is the ideal Kenya that we do want? Kenya Tuitakayo, right? So you can head over to our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook. Remember to give us a thumbs up there and like our page as well. And 20686 is our SMS portal. Our panelists are already here. They've been also just thumbing through the pages of the dailies this morning, and we want to hear from them as well. What is the ideal Kenya that you do want? I want to hear your sentiments, and those are our Twitter handles or our social media platforms that you can use for us to interact today. Allow me to introduce them this morning, right? We have with us here Mary Mukinde. She is a leadership coach, executive coach as well. And we do have also Sam Mohochi, who is the CEO or the executive director of International Commission of Jurists. We have also the executive director of Kenya Human Rights Commission. This is George Kegoro. And we do have also the CEO of Inuka Trust, John Gidongo, with us as well. Right. Good morning, gentlemen and lady.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen and lady.
Good morning. Debarl.
Yeah, you need to watch a bit of vivid early in the morning, right?
You wake up earlier than us.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, this is a
Oh, so you're still your system is still booting, yeah, you're booting slowly by slowly.
Yes.
Fantastic. Let's just begin from where we had this particular launch yesterday. Kenya Tuitakayo. Why Kenya Tuitakayo and why now? Let's begin with you, George Kegoro.
I think Kenya Tuitakayo because it is a shared aspiration on the part of all the actors that are trying to bring change at this time. There is no one across the political divide and outside of politics, but people who are trying to do reform. Everybody's agreed that the ideal Kenya is not yet there. So if you go, for example, to the handshake, let's start at the handshake. The handshake starts from a point of saying the Kenya that is, the ideal Kenya is not in place, and it is promising that it is going to move the country to a Kenya Tuitakayo situation. If you go to the initiative that is led by the faiths that has also launched, it is also saying we want reforms to put the country in a place where it ought to be, because it isn't currently in that place.
Yes.
Our own movement, Kenya Tuitakayo, well, some were calling it season 2 because there was a Kenya Tuitakayo before. It has the same premise. That's why it is starting that the ideal is not there. And we should all work, and we're going to be working towards bringing the country to an ideal situation. I need to add that the commonality of a starting point, that the Kenya that everybody needs and wants is not in place, is probably the only thing that is shared in common by all these groups. After that, they sharply divide in the way they are going to cause that Kenya they want to come into place. So, for example, if you go to the handshake, the handshake says we want to move the country to a better position than it currently is. And the way to do that has been decided for us by President Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga. So they've decided this is the place where we want to take the country. They've also decided this is that they are the two of them together with the task force that they have appointed and are the ones who are going to take the country there. So it's for them. There is no citizens are not involved. This is their project. The two of them are going to push us to where they want. The difference between them and us is that we define we don't prescribe what the problem is.
Yes.
that will be done by citizens themselves. Citizens will decide what their problem is. Citizens will define the solution to that problem, and citizens will also define the process of getting the transformation necessary to move the country from where it is to the Kenya to Itakayo place where they want it to go. So the big difference, the commonality is that all of us share an aspiration to improve Kenya somewhat, but the big difference is on the part of the initiative led by the political leadership of this country. They are the ones who are going to do it. There is no place for citizens. It's hakuna mwananchi anafanya hapo. Wao wanakuja, handshake, they say this is we've got a 9-point agenda. That 9-point agenda has been decided by themselves. They've decided on a roadmap. That roadmap is by themselves. They've decided on where the eventual place where the country is going to land, and that is by themselves, and the citizens are not part of it.
But that is not really entirely true, because we have this is actually a framework that was formed by that particular initiative. We have the 9-point agenda just as a framework. Then we'll go back to the wananchi, with those 9 points agenda, we also to collect their views, which they've not really started so far. As I'm given to understand, also finances also is they're a bit in a pickle as far as finances is concerned. Do you hold with this view? You think this is just being shoehorned or calmed down our throats?
The dilemma subsisting at the moment is that the Building Bridges initiative, for example, is extra-legal. It is not located in any legal framework. It lacks public participation. And as such, we tend to think that the position of the citizen and the Kenyan is central in determining what is the problem, how do you go about resolving it. Since the Building Bridges initiative, for example, started, it's been quite some time. They have not reached out to anyone. They operate in secrecy. It runs counter to the spirit of the Constitution of Kenya on public participation. We don't know which direction it's headed, and we deemed it fit to have the conversation by the citizens themselves. Because you go across the country and discover everybody is disgruntled. We do not think we are being governed in a manner in which we had expected. We do not think that the existing legal framework, both constitutional and statutory,
yes,
is not being deployed in a manner in which we had expected. To that extent, then, I think Kenya to Itakayo is a unique movement that seeks to speak to all sectors of this society.
Thank you.
In defining what is the problem first, as opposed to jumping to prescriptions that include, let's change the law, let's create this law, without looking ourselves in the eye and asking, what have we got wrong as a society and as a nation?
Yeah. Right, thank you. Let's hear just briefly from Mary before we take a short break. Mary, what is the ideal Kenya that you do want, and this particular initiative that also they're coming up with, Kenya to Itakayo, do you see that it can make a discernible difference? It can move, the needle a jot higher to, inclusivity, also citizens' participation?
I feel like the average Kenyan, all this is slightly above me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And this is where we go bland. You read something in newspaper and you just pass over and you say, too much highbrow issues. I don't understand them. I don't know what this new initiative is. And I go on with my life, which is working hard, trying to get some money to pay rent, get my children to school. And I say, let me leave it to the experts. My view is, as an ordinary citizen, which is what I'm doing here, and as a leadership coach, as an ordinary Kenyan who's working hard, and
yes,
just somebody who looks at things at the average level, is that I'm really tired of all these new initiatives. I'm sure they're good and they will help, but we've had the Kenya we want, now Kenya to Itakayo. There is so many of these new initiatives. I think, and I read somewhere actually, the CEO of Nation Group many years ago, I think 2009, wrote that the Kenya we want is a very easy question. Actually, the more difficult question is, how do we get to the Kenya we want? And to me, that is what is more important. And there isn't any one time that a country or even an organization can sit and say, let's sit together, let's agree on all the things that we need to do and start to do them, and that it will come great. Everything is a constant evolution of change, of tweaking with an organization of a country, and constantly tweaking it to get better and better. So for me, there are three key things that I would say from just an ordinary Kenyan's point that I think that would help us get better. We've come a long way. There's still things that need to be fixed. But for me, if we had things like a very efficient and swift justice system, 24-hour courts, where we have pride, and that includes the police system, that we know whatever we do, I can be able to get retribution, whether it's private, it's commercial, it's government. Then more open government, getting information accessible to people. And the last one for me is citizens' participation. I'm so tired of people complaining. I think we as citizens, and that's why I agree with the two gentlemen, that we ourselves have to take active participation in what happens. At the MCA level, we've got to complain, write, email, at the county government. We ourselves cannot just sit back and constantly be these people who are tweeting, who are following, who are exposing things. And we have all this, you know, mulikamwizi type of mentality without actually saying, what is my participation in this? What do I need to do to be a real involved citizenry? And whichever one of us knows something, propose that change now. Waiting for the whole citizenry to have meetings, to agree where we need to go. That's what happened in Bomas. And honestly, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, she's not a fan, of course, and when we circle back, we'll hear from John Gidongo as well. And of course, also remember to head over to our Twitter handle, AM Live NTV, or AM Live NTV, also on our Facebook page, and 20686, which is our SMS portal. We'll take a short break right now. When we circle back, we want to know why the movement aims, of course, or revolves around national resources, inclusivity, and the youth. And also, Kegoro says that there are no messiahs in Kenya. We are our own Messiah, or our own Messiahs. So let's hear from you as well. We'll take a station break right now. When we circle back, of course, we'll continue apace with the discussion. Don't go away. You're watching the Leadership Forum. What is the ideal Kenya that you want? Kenya Twitter Kayo movement is on. It was launched yesterday, and of course also they're seeking views from Kenyans on what the ideal Kenya that they do want. And I'm holding court this morning with Sam Muhochi, who is the Executive Director of ICJ, that is the International Commission of Jurists. Also, we do have with us Mary Mukundia. She's a leadership coach and also the CEO of CDI Africa. We do have with us as well George Kigoro, who is Executive Director of Kenya Human Rights Commission, and John Githongo, who is the Executive Director of Inuka Trust. Right, let's just hear from you. We promised to circle back with you, John. Good morning and good to see you as well. Kenya Twitter Kayo. What is the ideal Kenya? Mary says this is not the first time that we've been here. What do you think this particular movement now will bring as a substantial difference maybe to the previous attempt?
I think one of the things that makes Kenya special, and I'm not, I'm not an advocate of Kenyan exceptionalism, but I think Kenya is unique in many ways. And I think one of the ways that Kenya is unique is the capacity of its citizens to organize themselves to bring about positive change in the way that they are governed. Whether it's about constitutional reform, whether it's about removing Section 2A, whether it's protesting various things we organize, whether it's through civil society. At the time we had churches at the forefront. In fact, this is not the first. This is not the first Kenya Twitter Kayo. We've had one before. And all the freedoms that we enjoy, the new constitution that we enjoy, the fact that Nation TV has a license that is able to invite us here is as a result of these struggles, like Kenya Twitter Kayo, that comes now at an important time when we have a combination of factors, some of which my colleagues here have articulated very well, but we still have a corruption crisis in this country, this time combined with an austerity crisis where the poor are being forced to pay for the profligacy and corruption of the elite. We have a political transition coming in. This is President Kenyatta's last term constitutionally, the stroke of constitutional reform. So there's also a need to protect this constitution that took many Kenya Twitter Kayos to bring us to this point. So it's not only about protecting the gains that we have achieved so far, but taking us this next step at this rather fragile time, not only for Kenya, but for much of the world, which is in a very fragile economic time. Right,
George, so you're calling on Kenyans to rise and fight against impunity as well as claim political and economic freedom. First of all, before we even launch here, could we maybe try and highlight some of the high spots that we got from the previous initiative as well? That can be a learning lesson and also maybe a guiding post where we're headed with this particular initiative right now.
I think the previous initiative was the Kenya we want. It came about in the early 1990s. At that time, the big debate in the country was whether or not then there was need for constitutional reforms. The Kanu state denied the need for constitutional reforms. So the Kenya Twitter Kayo organized to demonstrate that constitutional reforms were necessary and had their place at the time. And so the highlight of that organization at the time was the creation of pamphlets in several local languages that explained a vision for the Kenya we want at that time, and the drafting in 1995 of a model constitution. So the fact that a model constitution was created, it fired up imagination and said, it's kind of moved the debate beyond whether or not constitutional reforms are necessary into the space of, if we were to do constitutional reforms, what might the content of those reforms be? So the Kenya Twitter Kayo movement of that time is the one that started the clamor for constitutional reforms that were realized in 2010. It took a long time, but that is where it started in the early 90s.
All right.
So, but before that, before the constitutional reforms, a reform moment came in 1997, where the reform forces were saying no reforms, no elections. And that is what led to sort of these abridged reforms through the IPPG process of 1997, getting rid of the Chiefs Authority Act, getting rid of sedition laws, expanding the electoral management body's composition to include participation by opposition groups, and so on and so forth. So that so there was a small reform thing that occurred in 1997 as a result of those efforts, which then was big enough to please the opposition to participate in the election. And then because it wasn't ultimately sufficient, the clamor continued after the 1997 election and culminated in the constitutional reform process that went on at Bomas at a later point in time.
All right, let's say from Sam Mohoche, and we trying to also look deeply, because we had Angelica Baberi saying that the talk, especially the talk on the constitutional change and the referendum right now, she says this may take us back from where we came from. But should we go back to where we came from and try and see where we lost it? Where did we lose a plot? Because right now everyone in Kenya, or maybe this is you know, the driving of the politicians' agenda as well, as far as the referendum is concerned, and we're not seeing the bigger picture. I don't know what will be your ideal position on this particular reforms that people now are clamoring for.
You know, it's documented that our national memory is only 21 days. And the Kenya Tuitakayo initiative is actually a mutation. It's been evolving since late last year. The reason why we are now talking about handshake, which is not anchored in any law, is because of the manner in which we handled the election last year. And I tend to think that we should always recall, because it's quite frustrating to many people that we have to come in and say, okay, what is the position of the citizen? If you look at the citizen, the charter that was launched yesterday, it is an affirmation by the citizens that we want to reassert our rights. We want our voices to be heard. That uniqueness is the difference. Let's hear out the citizens. We've met groupings, small-scale importers, you know, clearing and forwarding agents. You have people who have been evicted under very inhumane circumstances in Nairobi, Mombasa, and the state is just asserting and saying the state exists, so we have to do this. They don't care whether people will be rendered homeless. Is that right? Kenya has been exposed to a lot of public debt. Are the citizens adequately involved? Now that we have this situation of debt management, the state is going back to the citizens' pockets. Can the citizens' voices be heard? How do we want to proceed? You recall that the Building Bridges, for example, initiative talked about lifestyle audits. How are they being conducted? Who is doing it? Is it being done within the law? Is there a time frame? Do we expect results? These are the questions the citizens have to ask. When you see the mess created with importation of goods into the country, the delays occasioned, that is stifling commerce. So you find there are very many sectors, different sectors, that would wish for an ideal that does not exist, and they do not have the platform. So I think this provides an opportunity to involve citizenry in commenting and contributing in identifying the problem, as opposed to jumping the gun and saying, let's rush to constitutional referendum. We are internally trying to look at implementation of the Constitution so far.
Yes.
Trying to identify what is the problem in implementation. Is it the law? Is it the people? And how best that can be addressed. And that is why we have not taken the position that we support referendum or we oppose. And we tend to think that this has to be a much more in-depth, consultative and objective process.
Right. Mary?
I'm still not clear. Are there laws or are there not laws? Are there systems? Are there complaint channels? Yes, it's important to inform the citizenry on the key issues that are required. But as you've said, if there is property being taken over, or there is importers not able to process, what are the current laws? What are the current ways that we can address that issue? Are people following those channels of addressing those concerns, going to the courts, raising up the objectives according to the legal process that there are? If there are laws, then let's follow them, let's implement them. Because honestly, in my view, is that there is a lot of complaining by ourselves, by the citizenry, but what responsibility and ownership do we as citizens, either as business groups, as landowners, or whatever it is, to try and make sure that we follow that through? And that, to me, is my point. There's always, in a functioning society, going to be ills in a system. What is it that we're doing practically, following the causes written out in law to try and address them? There's the overall, in terms of visioning what can be done, but the immediate thing is not to go to the overall visioning and saying we're going to change the whole structure, is to go through the system and the processes that are there. If you don't follow the processes and the systems that are there, then are you saying that the law is not valid and is not going to be useful? And I'm telling, from my point of view, we're a functioning society. Yes. There are many ills, but how do we positively address these functions as ourselves to make sure that they're done? How do we increase open government? How do we increase accountability of the people that are there? And I've seen a lot of change, whether it's to do with the, hudumia wananchi. If I look years ago, getting IDs, getting, passports, filing your taxes. By the time you're actually making institutions accountable for what is they're supposed to do, making them open that we can see what is happening, we're able to get them to be more accountable. What's happening at the registrar of companies to ensure that there is data available and open to us? You can Google, who is this company? Who are the directors? Then we can allow investigative journalism or ourselves to understand who owns what is moving into that. Those are the systems we should be forcing and ensuring are working well. We used to have this thing of putting in what you've talked about, the wealth reports. Yes. I was there. All of us used to write them. What happens to those papers? Are they accessible? Are they digitized so that we can read who owns what and then we can audit their lifestyle? Those are the things, to me, that there's enough systems and structures that we should be pushing to be working, as opposed to saying that we need to rejig the system or we need to do 100% audit, and if it doesn't work, then we start a new system. That's what we as citizens, for myself, I am tired. We politicize and are politicking from January to December, 5 years in a row. When are we going to be building the nation?
So maybe we should also be, I think, on the context of wealth declaration. Because we know this particular exercise has been ongoing, the government has been harping on it. But what are you as civil society, and I know Bereshi is not really part of it, but you collectively as a civil society as well, what are you doing to put tails on this, some of these pronouncements that we get from the government or our political leaders who come out to the fore and say, yes, we shall start a wealth declaration. We see there's so much drama and melodramatic actions on it, then it tapers off. And no one actually is putting tails on it. John, the civil society has been fairly, it's studiously silent on so many things. Even we wondered, was the handshake extended also to the civil society as well?
I don't think we've been silent, Debarl. I think that's unfair. We've been very, very clear about some of these promises that have been made with regard to things like the audits, lifestyle audits. I think we even had the suggestion made by the president with regard to the use of lie detector machines on civil servants. And the point that was made at the time is that, for the last 6 years, this regime has been masterful at promising, but under-delivering massively on issues of accountability and anti-corruption. And that's something which we emphasize. So when the promises were made, again, we said, okay, let's watch and see. We hope for the best, but we don't expect very much. The process of public officials having to declare their assets and liabilities was something which has been there since 2004. I think if you go to the Public Service Commission today, you should still find that all public officials above a certain rank have to fill out their form every year. And there's a repository there. There was a space that was created that is there. And those documents are accessible via court order by people like the Anti-Corruption Commission and any other competent authority. So those systems exist, the information exists. What has been lacking, the disconnect, has been the will to initiate action, to say, okay, we're going to interrogate. This is Debarl's asset declaration over the last 6 years. This is Githongo's over the last 6 or 7 years, and we're going to use it to ask, you know, how come he's earning a salary of X but is living a lifestyle that is very different from that. So what we've seen, Kenya doesn't lack in systems, in laws, in procedures. We're very good at them. We're very good at producing reports as well. You know, we have, you know, people from academics from developed countries coming to study our anti-corruption infrastructure here in terms of our legal regime, because it is so sophisticated. What is unique here is that once we put it in place, we don't use it. It's as if you know, putting it on paper it means that it works. Once you put it down, once it exists, it has to be implemented. And sometimes you know, it has led, I believe, to a widespread, very fundamental skepticism, which is what you're feeling. A skepticism that despite all the promises, despite all the new initiatives that are being pronounced, that this is not really serious. This is something which will grab headlines. It's very, very interesting. It's very, you know, it gets a good headline that we're going to have lifestyle audits, that we're going to do lie detectors for public officials. But you know, as Sam said, 21 days later, it's gone, and people are back to complaining. And I think they complain with due cause, because they say, hold on, we keep on being promised something, but where's the delivery? The machinery is in place, but it is not being used. And that is a deliberate political failure, very deliberate.
All right. Yes.
Well, maybe just a quick one on what John has said on that issue, that those declaration of assets have been there from the 2000, I remember, and they are available. If civil society, you know, could push that those are made accessible online of anybody paid by public funds, just as salaries should be declared on public funds for each and every position, then that would be live, available data. We had a case of a governor supposed to be worth so many billions, he says that, and others.
Yes.
If we were able to have those and pushed for those to be available online, and we have also what is going on at the Registrar General, that is, you know, Registrar of Companies being publicized, then citizens in that particular area for themselves could search, what does my governor earn? What did he declare for the last 3 years? It's now time for election. You can actually see it. You can be able to have investigative journalists and others publishing reports of what people earn, what they did before. It is that sort of information that allows people, if it's there, to be able to make up their mind, was this person corrupt or not? Was this organization corrupt? Just as I've said, things to do with all the audit reports of every single parastatal and every single government department should be available online for people to see. All procurement that you've had procurement, now I understand, is available online. Who are the vendors? Who are the winning bids? Let them be online. Let's have open government that you can be able to track. It is those mechanisms and systems that allow you.
I agree, and I just want to respond to that, because I think that it's something that has already been dealt with. In 2004, when the system of asset declarations by public officials was implemented by the government at the time, civil society did push, led very much by Transparency International Kenya, for these to be made public. Because in Zambia, the asset declarations were actually published by civil society every year. We said, if they can do it in Zambia, why don't we do it here? It was stopped in Parliament. The MPs said that it would be a big risk and they'll be kidnapped, and, you know, a lot of excuses were made. Now, So the push continued. The push was from civil society. The pushback came from the political class. And I think that we've got to continue that push. In terms of the earnings of public officials being published, that is something that has been there before. Again, 2003, 2004, the salaries of certain public officials. I know when I was a public official, my salary was inside the government estimates, very clearly. You know exactly how much I was earning every month. And I think that we have two things. I think it's very important to make it to get this information online. We have an increasing number of agencies that are dedicated to also unpackaging this data and presenting it in a manner that wananchi are able to consume it.
Yes.
Because sometimes this information is available. I think it's either this next Tuesday when the Auditor General is going to be presenting his reports again to Parliament, and you know, one guarantee is that we're going to find quite a number of scandals in there, and they'll take time to unpack it. So building that capacity is important. Again, that's a role which I think Kenyan civil society has been able to play extremely well. You know, if you look at civil society across a region in engaging these issues.
But when we talk about the exercise of wealth declaration, could we say that also this is an exercise in futility? Because there is a tripping wire also in the Constitution that after all these people now they've declared their wealth, and the form itself actually is stashed in an envelope and stored away. What is the rhyme or reason for me actually to declare my wealth, and then this particular document that I have, itemizing all my wealth, is actually put in an envelope and stashed away because there is a law that says that particular document should be in an envelope and stocked away? So who knows what? And what is the rhyme and reason of having that particular law? I don't know what particular article of the Constitution in this. Maybe the legal minds will help us here, John Kigoro, to tell us, does it make any leak of sense to have all this exercise, everyone declaring their wealth, then we have all that listed and put in an envelope, no one knows what is in the envelope?
Debarl, this debate about wealth declaration is a tool in the overall set of infrastructure or mechanisms to promote integrity in public affairs. So it's just one of very many things. There are many other things that ought to be in place, but a system of integrity in the management of public resources is founded on 3 pillars. The first pillar is political leadership. You've got to have clear political leadership that the country is moving in a particular direction. That there is no evident political leadership in the fight against corruption or in the promotion of integrity. And we can give many examples that communicate that idea. But that's the most important of the 3 pillars. The second pillar is institutions, processes, and so on and so forth. So that is where the wealth declaration things come in, but it's not the only one. You've got to have investigative agencies that work. You've got to have action on reports that are made, and so on and so forth. There, you've got to have audits. So that is the second pillar. The third pillar is you've got to have public support for for integrity. That we are all committed to this way of life, and that is also not necessarily evident. And one of the ways in which public support for that for that choice is undermined by the first pillar, political leadership. Because what happens with political leaders is they incite the public to have to prevaricate about whether or not the fight against corruption is a good thing. This whole idea, mtu wetu, so on and so forth. So those are the wealth declaration is a small strand of a large pillar. But the most important pillar, which is political leadership, is itself absent. So we can talk about wealth declaration and say it is working, it is not working, but it isn't the only thing working, and it is not the most important thing that is not working.
That's a very huge general statement about political leadership not working. There's so many political leaders, from 47 governors to MPs to the executive. I think through my career, I've seen some changes. We move forward, we move back. In some aspects, we get better. In some, we get back. And I mean, the issue of parliament itself, yes, as a political leadership, them refusing for that issue to be published tells you what that political leadership in that circumstances are. But I think we've taken many steps forward, sometimes back. In some areas, we are right up there, and some areas we're not. So I think it's quite a mixed bag.
It's a mixed
bag. You know, particularly from a private sector and personal. I mean, there are things we've seen completely change because of technology. We've seen what technology does in e-citizenship, in IDs, getting IDs, the way Mwananchi was frustrated in getting passports, in getting a lot of documentation, in paying your taxes. KRA has certainly improved tremendously. There are still issues, but I think we made step changes. When I first went into government, I remember dealing with John in the first government of Kibaki and trying to clean up. There was real goodwill. I mean, we were talking about one organization where I was, and we brought international companies even in other areas to really clean up government. And there was such an enthusiasm and a move to claw back assets and deposits abroad. And I've seen some in this, you know, in the previous or current this regime, but we keep going back and going backwards. I like the way you put it in that there is that goodwill, political leadership, then there's the systems and structures, then there's the people themselves really getting up and demanding accountability of their leaders. And I'm hoping I see some of that happening at the county level, because government is very near to them and they see that that is not taking place. The citizenry then are saying, we are tired. They come into the county government and saying we are going to have a service. I think we've moved somewhat forward, but still the political leadership as a huge whole of MPs, MCAs, and others, there are some areas we really do go backwards sometimes.
Right. Let's say from Samahochi, because I think that particular question about the witness as well, or wealth declaration, as far as the Constitution is concerned, is it a tripping wire where we have the envelope also? You can address it briefly, and add on also your thoughts as well.
Just as my colleagues have mentioned, I think wealth declaration process was not meant to be academic, and it is not in the Constitution actually.
It is not.
The requirement of consent of the person who has declared to be given for opening of the envelope is contained in a statute.
Yes, that statute.
Yeah? So I think that renders it useless. What we don't know clearly is what the state does with the information. Or does it just seal the envelope and keep it? Is it, maybe Mary will tell us, or John, because they were in government. When the declarations are made, are they analyzed? Does the state take measures towards understanding what is being declared? Or is it just a form, a public officer signs it, puts it in an envelope, it is sealed, and that is it? From the perspective of civil society, I think the purpose of wealth declaration, as George had mentioned, was for purposes of ensuring that should there be disputes on what this public officer owns, or if there are allegations of impropriety on the part of the public officer, it becomes easy to determine how have you acquired your assets and properties. But we don't know. We don't know whether what the wealth declaration process serves at the moment.
Okay, John, you say that the Constitution is a tool Kenyans use to control the elite. What do you mean?
I think the point I was making is that there's an extent to which, if you look at the struggle that Kenyans have engaged in to change the Constitution, to remove Section 2A and to promulgate the Constitution that we have now in 2010.
Yes.
There's discussion now about changing it again. Yes, ultimately, if you look at the demands that come from the people, if you read through the very extensive comments that the Professor Yashgai team got as they went around the country, getting Wananchi's comments on what they wanted in the Constitution, it was very clear that one thing that Kenyans wanted to do was to manage what they felt was a very rapacious, small elite at the top of our society that is mismanaging and stealing their resources, and also treating them in a totally unaccountable manner. And Wananchi was saying, okay, let's have a constitution that protects us. It's almost as it's our shield and defender from the elite. So yes, the constitution is in a sense a tool for us to manage and to protect ourselves from this elite. But that was slightly tongue in cheek. Ultimately, the Constitution says the people are sovereign, and it's really the contract between us as a society and how we want to live that is expressed in that document, and that's why people put a lot of truck into it. Yes, but for Wananchi, yes, we cry back to the Constitution. People rush to court, to the Supreme Court, etc., to be able to find some respite from the excesses of an elite that has run riot, especially now. And I say especially now, Debarl, because we're in an unprecedented situation where Kenya is implementing essentially an IMF. It's not designed by them, but it's an IMF template austerity program. We had climbed out of that by 2010. We have climbed back into this hole simply because of our profligacy and corruption. And it's Wananchi. You're paying for it, I'm paying for it, but ordinary Wananchi, the cost of paraffin, the cost of just food and daily living is paying for this. And I think that's painful, and that causes this ngumunikering that you're hearing, this disquiet that you're hearing amongst Wananchi, that we've gone backwards. Yes, Kenya has moved forward tremendously. We're collecting a lot more in taxes. Yes, you can go in and get your passport. In hours. It used to take forever to get. And so yes, Kenya has moved forward, but I think Kenyans have a right to demand, and that's what makes us a unique and dynamic and thriving society. That we are always pushing ourselves. We always want more. We're not satisfied. Kenyans. President Moi used to say, Kenya is an island of stability in a sea, and he would compare us to Somalia and other places. And I would always say Kenyans don't compare themselves to failed states. And it's very sad if we're going to have leaders now who economically, due to real recklessness, lead us in that kind of direction.
Right. Let's say from Georgia, there are no messiahs. We are our own messiahs. But do you think there is a collective angst amongst Kenyans? Because the sense right now is a sense of despondency amongst the citizens, really, that our leaders have failed us. We've thrown our hands in the air. Let it be like it is right now. There's nothing much that we can do. We're actually controlled by the political elite in this country. So how can we be our own messiahs when we do not have that particular grit and the sheer resilience to even go through the fight? We feel like we're actually backed on the wall right now.
I think we are coming from a place where, if you just take the last 5 years of this government, they came to office, had huge promises for the country. We'll do this, we'll build this number of stadiums across the country and very many things. They had promises of glitter for all of us, but that has not particularly materialized. But that has also not stopped them from promising us. They still make more promises, and there's no acceptance. There's no overt acceptance on their part that the things that they promised have not been delivered on, and the contrary is quite the case, that there's been significant failure to achieve anything that is beneficial in terms of the public interest. So that's the space we are in. so we're in a space where there's been failure, but that failure hasn't had political consequences for anybody. The people are still in charge, they're still promising more, and they're still taking us down a path that is going to hurt us. So, so either we believe them and postpone our own agency, postpone our own taking responsibility for ourselves, or we rise up now and say, this is our country, and we're going to come together and organize ourselves in a manner that we assert our own leadership for our own selves and determine for ourselves where we want to go as a country. So that is where I'm saying the people who had a messianic entry into public office and promised us many things haven't delivered on those things, but there are no consequences to them. So do we wait until when do we wait until before we take action and take control of our own lives?
George, and political consequences seen in elections, if you're going to have rule of law and order, and you're saying there are no political consequences, but political consequences are then in an election, whether you're an MCA, an MP, a president, a deputy, a party, you reap what you sow in the elections. And I know that's another debate. So when you say that then you will organize yourselves to be able to demand or take control, what is that? Because for me, is to hold them accountable throughout that process, and then, and every day, hap on it, take them onto account on every single thing they say that they will do and haven't done. And then at the end of those 5 years or 2 years, whatever it is, you hold them responsible, and you know, by the consequences, you say, bye-bye, I'm going to another party. I'm just wondering. I'm
glad you raised that. It would be a nice thing to do if elections worked. The point is elections don't work in this country. Let's
your opinion. But
yeah,
yes.
Let's just talk about the last election, 2017, just last year, recent memory. So we go into this election, which is annulled by the Supreme Court. And like we've had all grouses in relation to all the previous elections, but this one is actually annulled by the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court says there were illegalities and irregularities, and then it orders a fresh election. That fresh election is not materially better than the first election that was annulled, because then violence and disorder and entropy just sets in such a manner that the quality of management is significantly deteriorates. But the message being sent by the political leadership is that whatever you do, we'll always have our way. If you go to court and whatever the courts give you or whatever the courts tell you, we will not only not obey it, but we will also scare everybody so hard, Msando and so on and so forth, into ensuring that we have our way. So elections as a mechanism for renewing society, as a mechanism for ensuring that ordinary people have a way of expressing how they feel about how they've been governed, are not working at the moment, and that is part of the problem that we have as a country.
All right, let's see from Sam as well, because you say that this particular movement is aiming at to take back leadership and also to take back resources. Could we expound on this? When we talk about taking back leadership and taking back resources, what essentially do we mean? Are we facing a country, or are we in a country where there is a leadership crisis from your own appraisement?
I think it's taken a couple of months in formulating the 10 points. And as I had mentioned earlier on, that this has been a mutation from Kura Yangu, Sauti Yangu, we the people. And it's becoming bigger because we are seeing even trade unions moving in and joining us. We are seeing faith-based groups. And we are starting on the premise of, can we try to identify the problem? So when you look at leadership as Kenyans, can we ask ourselves the question, do we have leadership that is satisfactory? Do we have leadership that Kenyans can be proud of? We have seen mediocre leadership at very high levels as a result of the elections. Is this what we anticipated? Nairobi is a crucial and important economic hub for this country, and we know how the governance systems in Nairobi operate today? Is this what we really expected? What is the role of the citizen? So when you talk about we need to assert a leadership, we need to have a candid conversation. What kind of leadership do we want in this country? Do we want criminals? Do we want to celebrate criminals? Yeah? When we talk about resources, for example, how are our resources being managed? Because these grievances and complaints are all over. Yeah? When policies are being formulated, are they people-oriented policies, or are they just economic policies because somebody is sitting calculating figures and saying the state will make this kind of billions without looking at the people? Does the state exist for the people, or does it exist by itself? I think those are the critical questions. What is our sovereignty as a people? What is our role? And this is a conversation that seeks to empower the people first. Let us assert ourselves, let us assert our rights, so that with all these groupings, whether it's political elites or business community, at the end of the day, Kenya exists for the sake of these people, the citizens. And we'll be here for a short time. What are we leaving our children, our grandchildren? Yeah? Will their lives be much more better? If we were to ask and pose that question, will their lives be much more better than today? I don't think so. So we need to have a candid conversation. What is leadership and integrity? What is the spirit in the Constitution?
Okay.
I hear you and I agree with you 100%. And I remember saying the same thing a couple of weeks ago, and I was challenged as to whether we ourselves as citizens actually take that participative ownership and responsibility to be part of that debate. And I was talking about Nairobi and complaining about this road and this and that. And somebody told me, you don't go to those meetings. You don't, you know, and they put in the newspapers. We don't go. We don't text our MCA. We don't, and he gave me examples of things that he has done, seeing a road being done, it wasn't up to the whatever feet, he texted, they got the people to go. So I think the issue is, how do you mobilize ourselves, we the people, to be part of each discussion and to go? Otherwise, then you'll be subject to capture of a few civil societies who also go and say what they want without getting the population to go. I always see those things in the newspaper. They're debating this budget, the day here, Kwale, or this place. Do people go? Very few go. So those with interest, if it's industry lobbies, they will write what they want. Association of Manufacturers, KEPSA, they will do this. We as our ordinary people, how do we take responsibility and know we are part of that process? And to me, mobilizing our citizenry, ourselves, to know there's nobody who's going to build Kenya for you other than yourself. How do you physically participate at that individual level? That to me is a major problem. Because there are some counties you hear, they're doing very well. You know, their governors are doing very well, and there are some where there's absolutely, you know, nothing going on.
All right. Even as we're preparing to give our headline thoughts, we'll come to you, Sam. Maybe, George, you will tell us right now. Yes, we have this particular initiative. What are we aiming to achieve? Do we have any particular timelines? Or will it just be another initiative, a flash in the pan, taper off, then we'll have another initiative coming without even getting the results of this actually, and having some of the high spots that we were actually gagging for or really fronting for?
I think, thank you very much for asking that question, because then it takes us back to like the central discussion that was planned for this morning. So what we are planning to do is to help citizens, to motivate citizens to organize themselves to make concerted demands that improve their own lives. That's really it. And the way to do that would be to help citizens come together in different parts of the country. If you go around the country, this country has a lot from very many aspects of failure. If you go to the northern half of the country, huge amounts of violence that is perpetrated by different actors, some of them state actors, some of them local militia against local populations. If you come into the cities, the poorer neighborhoods, huge amounts of violence in the form of extrajudicial executions and so on and so forth. So the country hurts from very many different problems, and people don't have something that organizes all these separated, individualized struggles. So what we are trying to do through this movement is to bring a collective thread that organizes different people and their struggles into a commonality that has a concerted demand that is capable of being noticed. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to organize them to realize that their problems are related to how governance choices, how governance decisions are being made and have been made, and if those decisions are changed, if the process is changed for making those decisions, that has an effect on their own individual positions. And then if you have a critical mass, then make demands and take matters into their own hands in terms of improving their own lives. So the first part of this is informational. Then organizing people to first of all giving them information, and using that information. Once they have that information, they will understand what their problems are. They will also discuss the solutions, and also and come up with a pathway, a roadmap to achieving those solutions. And because they will then be a critical mass, they will be able to make demands that yield what they want for themselves.
Yeah. Johnny Gidongo, your closing remarks briefly as we wrap up.
I couldn't agree more with what George has just said. But if you look at the Kenya to Itakayo charter that was read yesterday, one of the key objectives is also to protect our constitution. A great deal of struggle has a lot of Kenyans have struggled a great deal to reach where we've reached with this very special constitution that we have as a country, and therefore it needs protection, especially key elements of it like devolution. So this time, with this permutation of Kenya to Itakayo, perhaps some of the greatest energy might not actually be seen here in Nairobi, but out in the counties. And yesterday, even though we were meeting in Nairobi for the event, many of the people who are there came from around the country. And some of the most energized groups are in the counties, directly involved in the governance choices that are impacting on their lives on a daily basis in their counties. And them being able to come together with colleagues from other counties and share experiences and lessons is extremely important. So that's another very important objective.
Thank you. Mary, your closing remarks?
Yes, I just got concerned when I heard George saying take matters into our own hands, citizens, and then sort of, decide the solutions. But then he went on to say on what they can do. So that makes me feel comfortable that people are taking ownership and accountability to do something, and we're moving away from the mulika mwizi kind of approach. We're always pointing on what's happening without taking ownership and responsibility to demand what we are actually required. So that makes me feel positive.
Thank you. Sam, finally, your closing remarks. And
my only closing remarks are to the Kenyans. Those who think they are comfortable, it's good, it's okay. Those who think there are issues that need a conversation, because we have had this experience. The launch yesterday was not just the first thing we did. So, for example, when you talk to hawkers in Nairobi, you start from the premise, do you have any issues? If they don't have any issues, you tell them, thank you very much. If they have issues, then you start processing those issues and you see what is their role, what role can they take up, what are their responsibilities, and who else can come in. So we intend to proceed on this basis, and I tend to think that participation, genuine public participation is key. When I say genuine, I also do not mean some of the public participation we have witnessed from 2010.
Thank you. And of course, Kenyans have issues. Just read one or two tweets as we're winding up. Abdallah Mudambo is saying the Kenya to Itakayo is that which cares for the people, protects the dignity of all, and where all of us are able to realize our aspirations on an equal basis. Also, we have David Gadura saying, genuine democracy in Kenya and our politics, genuine democracy in Kenya and our politics not to interfere with the economy and above all maturity in our politics. Also, we do have Karani Onsomo saying, just, inclusive, healthier, this is what they want. Also, we do have Whitney Micheni saying, transparency, accountable and uncorrupt. That is what they desire. Right. Thank you very much for your valid company, and also to our panelists this morning, Sam Mohochi, who is the ICJ of, is the Executive Director of ICJ, that is the International Commission of Jurists. Also, thank you to Mary Mukindia. She is the CEO of CDI Africa and also Executive Coach. Thank you for coming through. Also, the Executive Director of Kenya Human Rights Commission, George Kigoro, thank you for coming through. And also the CEO of Inuka Kenya Trust, thank you for coming through, John Gidongo as well. We really do appreciate, and we hope Kenyans will run with this initiative to make sure that, yes, we have the Kenyan, the ideal Kenyan that we all aspire for. Thank you very much for your valid company. Living with Us is up next.